Something was revealed in Halo 1 that almost no one noticed and was so extremely profound and shocking that it changes everything and basically has revealed what 343 and Bungie has been planning for about 20 years now. This plot thread has yet to be fully explored, but there is more reason now than ever to believe that it will finally come to its conclusion and Master Chief's darkest secret will be exposed. Anticipated for almost 20 years, we might be seeing one of gaming's biggest climaxes yet. Before we get started, guys, be sure to smash that like button blue, as every like helps spread the video to other Halo fans around YouTube. But today I like to set a goal. Let's try to get to 3,000 likes. We can totally do it. Thanks so much. Let's jump into it. This video is supported by Audible. Snag yourself a free Halo audiobook right down in the description below. About 6 years ago, I made a video called Master Chief's Darkest Secret, and this video went viral, and I think for good reason. In Halo 1, there is something so subtle, however so infinitely amazingly profound that it changes so much about Master Chief, Cortana, the Foreigners, the Mantle of Responsibility, and the plausible story that we will see in Halo Infinite, and was even teased once again in Halo 4, and I believe 5 as well. Now, with these new story details and the years passing since talking of this, it is a great time to revisit this fascinating plot thread, and since Halo Infinite will be a spiritual reboot, it only cements this theory and the evidence pointing to a much grander vision that Bungie has planned almost 20 years ago, and I'll explain all of this in detail soon with possibilities, theories, and what we know. But first, let's recap the proper context, some things that you will probably want to know for later in this video, and also, of course, expect me to say librarian wrong. Alright, let's jump into it. So, about 100,000 years before the start of Halo 1, a young foreigner named Bornsteller went to Earth in search of ancient precursor artifacts. In this search, he found a human named Chakas, and this Chakas person acted as a guide to help him find the artifacts. And they came across the Cryptum and awoken the Didact. Later in the story, the Didact performed a terrible mutation on Bornsteller, essentially making him a copy of the Didact, and also giving him ability to go into the domain. Bornsteller is now known as the Iso-Didact. Chakas is later badly injured and remade into the monitor that we all know as 343 Guilty Spark. Meanwhile, the librarian has been busy placing imprints among primitive humans, and these imprints would basically act as DNA subconscious desires. Much like a seed to a plant, she could alter and influence the plant and how it would end up looking, and she kind of did that with humanity and technology and so on. The librarian placed a few of these subconscious desires on key characters like Chakas to go awaken the Didact, for example. But Bornsteller had suspected that the librarian placed another geas somewhere on the human race, and I think likely this would be the Master Chief, which would lead to an eventuality like Cortana and his armor, and probably a big conclusion which we'll talk about at the end of this video. But anyway, to put it in really simple terms, the Didact seen in Halo 4 had actually made himself a copy on Bornsteller, almost kind of like mind controlling him, if you will, whenever he wanted, and would even later encounter mendicant bias during the war on Installation 07. But later, Iso-Didact, at the end of the Forerunner Flood War, was preparing to fire the Halo arrays. This was the big event that wiped out the Flood and all sentient life in the galaxy. At the end of the Forerunner Flood War, right before firing the Halo ring, the Iso-Didact asked Chakas, 343 Guilty Spark, right? He said, "Were it your choice, could you fire the Halo array?" Now, keep note of this, alright? Now, having recapped all of this, let's listen to a Halo 1 cutscene on 2 Betrayals where the oblivious Master Chief is told by Cortana the real purpose of the Halo rings.
Is it true?
More or less. Technically, this installation's pulse has a maximum effective radius of 25,000 light years. But once the others follow suit, this galaxy will be quite devoid of life. Or at least any life with sufficient biomass to sustain the flood. But you already knew that. I mean, how could you?
Left out that little detail, did he?
We have followed outbreak containment procedure to the letter. You were with me each step of the way as we managed this crisis.
Chief, I'm picking up movement.
Why would you hesitate to do what you've already done?
We need to go right now.
Last time you asked me, if it were my choice, would I do it? Having had considerable time to ponder your query, my answer has not changed. There is no choice. We must activate the ring.
The main rebuttal to all this is the fact that 343 Guilty Spark refers to Chief as a reclaimer, aka human, obviously meaning that all of this would be very impersonal and much less fascinating. But the fact is that 343 refers and talks to Chief as if he was the Iso-Didact and could even remember being the Iso-Didact. But it was in Halo 4, 11 years later, that 343 would actually pick up this plot line, again adding to the evidence and just how crazy this all is. According to the librarian, she revealed that she has been guiding mankind through the millennia since their receding, providing a blueprint for their evolution, their technology advancement, the Spartan program, the Spartan armor, and even Cortana, the now created. The librarian told Chief that he was the accumulation of thousands of lifetimes of planning, and Chief asked, what planning, in which they were stopped before a clear answer was made. And pretty much things have just kind of come to a halt here in this plot thread. But just like with Chaka's, how he was imprinted with subconscious desires to awaken the Didact, it's likely that Master Chief too was imprinted with subconscious desires and motives through 1,000 generations to do something massive. And if we were to look closer at this cutscene, a new cinematic for Halo Infinite, I think it's kind of alluding to the strength of a Spartan, but more specifically, the Master Chief. And I wonder in the librarian scene if these aren't a cutaway for narrative reasons, but rather flashbacks or some kind of vision Master Chief is having. After all, we see his armor being broken up and kind of exploding, and I think this ties a lot into this theory and backs everything up even more. Halo Infinite is a spiritual reboot. Alright, not only was this confirmed by 343's boss Bonnie Ross, and also brought up again and again through media and interviews, but the cover art is also obviously trying to kind of amp up Halo 1, right? Well, this is somewhat of a remake, an evolution of what made Halo great, and I believe this story arc or plot thread of Chief's connection to the Iso-Didact and a Forerunner past will also be further teased and explored heavily in Halo Infinite, and here's a few reasons why. Alright, after Bungie apparently had abandoned this plot thread, it was revisited by 343 in Halo 4, with the librarian hinting at this storyline, although things still are left unanswered, and for good reason, and I think will be setting up things for Halo Infinite. Master Chief also came in contact with Cortana within the domain very early on in Halo 5, likely one of the many gifts given to him by the librarian. And if Chief at any time is able to now communicate with Cortana as he did in Halo 5, I think this would be a great tool for the writing in Halo Infinite to keep a dialogue between these two characters, which I believe undoubtedly is going to happen in one way or another in Infinite, and I think Chief will learn more about these abilities or gifts unlocked in his gene song. And in 2018's trailer, we see several ancient human structures, something that we've never seen before on a Halo ring, at least in some time. Even the scribings on the wall, which we believe says enemy within, is just more evidence that 343 is backing up this plot thread. And the fact that this game is a spiritual reboot means that 343 may reset or reinitialize this intriguing plotline for new fans to understand easily, but perhaps give us some new answers that we didn't know before. Let's look at the story arc of Halo 4 and Halo 5, and with that, see where Infinite is actually headed. Alright, so obviously the game is going to reset some of the pieces. Obviously this is supposed to be a good introduction point for new players as well as old Halo fans. I do think the previous games are to play a big part in setting up what's to happen, and those games aren't confirmed to not be important or need to know in Halo Infinite. It's just Halo Wars 2 you don't need to know. But Halo 4 set the groundwork for the Foreigners, their backstory, the Didact, the Prometheans, and at some point Cortana's death, and her survival in the domain. This was a decent enough setup for Halo 5's story, which focused on the Guardians, the domain, the mantle of responsibility, which is the logical next step after Halo 4. If Halo Infinite continues on this trend, then we're only going to go deeper into those things seen in Halo 5, if not advance to the next step, which will likely have humanity finally embracing, or at least a kind of understanding the mantle of responsibility, or at least fighting Cortana, and Master Chief interacting more within the domain, exploring the gene song that he was given, and seeing the full impact of the war, and also the Halo rings connection to everything, specifically Zeta Halo. I can't help but think that Master Chief's geas are leading up to fulfill some master plans, such as being the first reclaimer to take the mantle of responsibility as Cortana has. So let's loop back to the trailer earlier. It's basically confirmed in Halo 1, supported by Halo 4 scenes, that Master Chief has been imprinted with the Iso-Didact's geas, his darkest secret, if you will, and given a gene song. But what does this all actually mean for Infinite? Some suggest that the Librarian had planned for a new domain, a new place for newly advanced humans such as Master Chief to take the mantle of responsibility. And perhaps this would be a way to fight back against Cortana, since there really is little way of fighting Cortana with Forerunner tech at her side, as well as likely the Banished, and this makes more sense why the UNSC forces aren't enough, and why we see Master Chief defeated at Zeta Halo. And the Infinity was likely destroyed or defeated in some sense, and obviously they need something more powerful. Whatever happened at Zeta Halo was not enough. In Halo Wars, I was so fascinated by the scene with how the Covenant, at the help of a reclaimer, Anders, who was kidnapped and used, planned to use Forerunner ships, and this would obviously end the Human Covenant War very quickly if it had ever happened. So I wonder if maybe the best way to fight Cortana is fight fire with fire and use Forerunner tech against her. Guilty Spark, as confirmed in many areas of the story, said humans were the inheritor of all they left behind. He likely was referring to all of humanity, but who better than Master Chief, specifically made and influenced, or at least up to him by the Librarian, to be the first inheritor? And I don't think it would be very good storytelling if it was just any average reclaimer. I believe Master Chief is special, and he was set up for a special purpose, especially given those abilities to access the domain, immunity to the Composer, and so on. These are things that I think are going to be crucial in defeating Cortana, but also the next step in Halo's overarching story with the Forerunner saga. Thomas Lasky, at the end of Halo 5, said that they will face Cortana when they find a way to fight back. And I think simply it just makes the most sense that Master Chief himself is the way to fight back. I don't know if Master Chief would end up accepting the mantle or how exactly that would look, but it would probably be fitting considering that he saved the galaxy a few times now and apparently is gearing up to do it again, fighting the Harbinger and the Banished, and there won't be a home if we don't stop the Banished. So likely the Banished are doing something on the behalf of Cortana. But if you think about the games and their overall theme, is that it's all been leading up to humanity rightfully taking the mantle of responsibility and inheriting everything in the Forerunners galaxy, right? And actually this was the conflict that led to the Human Covenant War in the first place, because the prophets learned of this truth and tried to cover it up by trying to kill all humans. But also this was a repetitive theme in Halo 4 and 5. Like the Didact was talking at the end of Halo 4, he said, "The reclamation has already begun." Then with those words, revealing Master Chief's face, which in my opinion, is very strongly hinting Chief's direct tie-in with the reclamation, that he is a very key figure in all of this going down, and humanity's fight for the mantle and survival, whether they know it or not, with Cortana. A lot of this, maybe everything I said here, or maybe none of it will be revealed in Halo Infinite. But as a takeaway from this video, consider this. Master Chief's secret of possessing the Iso-Didact's geas, along with the Librarian giving him unknown powers and abilities, will give John a fighting chance, more than any other Spartan or maybe human alive would, facing Cortana. And if Cortana is truly the bad guy, at least narratively in Halo Infinite, now known probably as the Harbinger, and aiding the Banished, then she will be truly a powerful opponent, not only because of her armies, Prometheans, Guardians, and Celia AI, and near limitless Forerunner power, but she also used to be a friend and very close to Chief. There's a lot of hints that she will simply return as an AI chip in Chief's head, but with all the people that she killed, I don't think there's ever any going back. But I think these trailers are trying to mislead us. It's much more likely that Chief has acquired a new copy of Cortana Unreached and is using her help in combination with unlocking this history of the Foreigners and the Iso-Didact. And overall, I think in Halo Infinite, the game will be about humanity fighting for the mantle of responsibility because it's now a necessity with all these things happening. But of course, I think if they are successful, that will introduce many more problems, but I'll save that for another video. Guys, be sure to snag yourself that free Halo audiobook. It's a quick sign up link in the description. So what do you guys think, knowing all this now, if you didn't know it already, will happen in Halo Infinite? What kind of abilities and things would you like to see Chief do in the next game? And how do you feel about all this? Do you think this plot thread should continue? Do you think it will play any big role in Halo Infinite? Be sure to let me know your own theories in the comment section below, and be sure to smash that like button so hard it turns blue. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one soon. Peace.